December 16, 1944. The frost lay thick over Monshaw, Germany. Headman Klaus Richter of the 12th SS Panzer Division scribbled frantically in his combat log, barely comprehending the horror unfolding before him. His men, seasoned soldiers who had survived years of war, were being torn apart in their foxholes, not by direct hits, not by conventional artillery, but by a terrifying new weapon. Shells detonated in midair, precisely above their heads, raining death from the sky. In 3 minutes, over 700 German soldiers were dead. The few survivors fled in shock, whispering the same words, "Die Luft, tot." The air kills. What Richter had just witnessed was the combat debut of America's most revolutionary secret weapon of the war, the proximity fuse. A miniature radar system embedded inside an artillery shell, capable of thinking mid-flight. This invention would increase artillery effectiveness 1,000-fold, save tens of thousands of Allied lives, and redefine the very nature of warfare. Conventional shells required thousands of rounds to hit airborne targets, but proximity-fused shells destroyed planes with remarkable efficiency. Anti-aircraft fire that once barely scratched the sky now became almost unstoppable. And it wasn't only aircraft. Entrenched soldiers and missile attacks, like London's terrifying V-1 flying bombs, would feel the fuse's deadly impact. But the story of this weapon didn't begin on the battlefield. It began in Britain, at the darkest hour of the Blitz. On October 30, 1939, a young scientist named W. but submitted a proposal that seemed almost fantastical, an artillery shell that could think, detect its target, and detonate at the optimal distance. The problem was monumental. How could a tiny radio device survive forces 20,000 times greater than gravity, spin at tens of thousands of revolutions per minute, and function reliably under extreme temperatures? Early prototypes proved the concept, but the technology to mass-produce it simply didn't exist. The solution came across the Atlantic in September 1940, aboard the Canadian Pacific liner Duchess of Richmond. Britain's Tizard mission delivered every secret weapon the nation possessed to America, in exchange for industrial capacity and security. Among them was the proximity fuse concept. In a conference room overlooking Connecticut Avenue, British physicist John Cockcroft handed the plans to Merle Tevete, a 39-year-old American physicist from South Dakota. Tevete's eyes filled with determination as he realized the task ahead: take a brilliant but fragile concept and turn it into a weapon that could survive the rigors of combat. Tevete's laboratory, later the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, became the birthplace of the modern smart weapon. Engineers and scientists, including James Van Allen, Lloyd Berkner, and Richard Roberts, worked tirelessly to solve the near-impossible challenges of miniaturization, shockproofing, and electronics that could survive extreme forces. Van Allen developed vacuum tubes that could withstand the acceleration of a cannon shot. Berkner designed circuits that could detect approaching targets with astonishing precision. The National Carbon Company created batteries that would only activate mid-flight, ensuring maximum power when needed. By January 1942, prototypes were being tested at sea. The USS Helena became the first proving ground. Lieutenant Russell Red Cochran watched as the proximity-fused shells streaked across the morning sky, detonating perfectly near Japanese dive bombers. Unlike conventional artillery, the shells didn't need a direct hit. They exploded in midair, instantly destroying planes with devastating precision. Crew members stared in disbelief, describing the effect as like God himself was guiding our shells. The Navy quickly realized the game-changing potential. Tests in Chesapeake Bay against radio-controlled drones confirmed the shell's reliability. Mass production began immediately, with every step of the process shrouded in secrecy. American industry rose to the challenge in extraordinary fashion. Factories, from converted bakeries to automobile plants, churned out fuses at record speed. By 1944, more than 70,000 fuses were produced daily. Thousands of women, soldering delicate components in windowless rooms, had no idea they were constructing one of the most important weapons of the war. Only decades later did the deadly side effect of the materials they handled come to light. Workers suffered from beryllium disease, a hidden cost of the proximity fuse's creation. Meanwhile, in combat, the proximity fuse reshaped warfare. During the Battle of the Bulge, American artillery fired proximity-fused shells over snow-covered fields near Hofen, Germany. Forward observers reported near-total annihilation of enemy infantry, including units that had survived 4 years of brutal fighting. The shock was not only physical but psychological. entire German units surrendered rather than face airburst artillery. In the Pacific, the fuse transformed naval combat. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea, hundreds of Japanese aircraft were destroyed before they could reach American ships. Kamikaze attacks, the desperate tactic adopted by Japan to counter this new threat, proved only partially effective. Even when planes broke through, proximity fuses minimized damage, saving countless lives. In Europe, proximity fuses defended London and Antwerp from the deadly V-1 flying bombs. Against all odds, anti-aircraft batteries equipped with proximity-fused shells destroyed the majority of incoming missiles, saving tens of thousands of civilian lives and keeping vital supply lines open for advancing Allied forces. Observers and soldiers alike marveled at the weapon's effectiveness, noting that entire defensive strategies had been rewritten almost overnight. Post-war analyses confirmed the fuse's decisive impact. Thousands of Japanese aircraft, countless German soldiers, and untold numbers of missiles were destroyed because of this invention. Allied casualties, naval losses, and civilian deaths were dramatically reduced. Strategic planners like Eisenhower and Churchill credited the proximity fuse with saving the war at critical junctures. Even German scientists, examining captured fuses, concluded that such a device should have been impossible. The proximity fuse's influence extended far beyond World War II. It revolutionized military tactics, from naval operations to artillery strategy, and accelerated technological innovations in electronics, radar, and aerospace. James Van Allen would later apply lessons from the fuse to America's first satellite, discovering the radiation belts that bear his name. The project became a model for Anglo-American scientific collaboration, setting the stage for Cold War-era cooperation and innovation. Yet behind the statistics and strategic assessments were human stories of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice. Scientists who labored for years without seeing their work deployed, sailors who witnessed the technology save lives firsthand, and assembly workers whose painstaking labor remained secret for decades, all contributed to a triumph that redefined the art of war. The proximity fuse was more than a weapon. It was a testament to the power of human intellect, industrial might, and international cooperation in the face of existential threats. By the war's end, the world had witnessed the first smart weapon in history. It changed the course of battles, saved countless lives, and heralded a new era of warfare where technology and strategy intertwined more closely than ever before. The men and women behind the proximity fuse, scientists, engineers, and workers alike, had achieved the impossible. And in the quiet aftermath of conflict, as Europe and the Pacific rebuilt, the lessons of innovation, secrecy, and ingenuity lived on, shaping not only the future of warfare but the trajectory of human technological progress itself.